vodka. That's how that happened. And so my vodka is and was just the most rewarding.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
You're the author of the book, The Big Letdown, which I absolutely love the title of that book. I remember seeing it the first time. I was like, so clever. I love it. But really having this conversation about the challenges that women are facing when it comes to their maternal health, when it comes to pregnancy and after pregnancy, and then specifically the problems that Black women are having that are not because of anything to do with them inherently, but because of how society is set up. And you look at the intersection of so many different factors that impact women. So in particular in your book, you talk about big medicine, you talk about feminism, you talk about how these intersecting factors really have this very negative impact. So what are some of the statistics that we need to be aware of, just so people who are completely new into this world may not have heard of it? You know, I wrote about some of it in Me and White Supremacy, but what are some of the figures that when people hear them, it makes them go, whoa, I didn't know that.
Right. Well, I mean, we can start with the Black maternal mortality rate, which is here in the U.S., Black women are over 243% more likely to die during and after childbirth.
Sorry, just slow that down again. How much?
243% more likely to die, according to the CDC. And, you know, when we look at what's happening nationally, we look at what's happening on a state level, we see this disproportionate range between the ways that the rates at which white women die and the rates at which Black women die. And of course, no woman should be dying. The United States overall falls within the bottom categories for maternal mortality and pretty much all the maternal health indicators, as well as infant mortality for our country. But when we think about what's specifically happening to Black women, I live in New York City, and in New York City, right, one of the most cosmopolitan cities, the Black women are 12 times more likely to die than white women. And so we know that there's something going on. And you name a city, they have a similar statistic. And so when we see this disproportionate pattern, we have to start asking why. And I think the history has been to problematize Black women. There's something wrong with them. They're not taking care of themselves. They have pre-existing conditions. They're obese. They have high blood pressure. But even when you control for those factors, right? Because there are white women who have those same underlying conditions, Black women still have this disproportionate rate of dying. And so we really have to start asking what's going on here. And then we see on the breastfeeding side, a racial disparity in breastfeeding rates that has lingered for over 40 years, right? And so while we are getting to better numbers in terms of initiation, but if you look at what is considered the gold standard of infant nutrition, which is 12 months, if you look at anything starting from 3 months to 6 months, those numbers, particularly for Black women, begin to tank, right? And so even at the 12 months, there's like a 50% gap that, you know, varies by points of a percentage point by year, but we haven't been able to crack that. And that's important. That's important. I mean, because when we think about, particularly in America, this history of slavery and what happened to Black women and that disruption of their motherhood journey. And I remind everyone, it is no coincidence, and it should not be lost on any of us, that the women who are breastfeeding their children the most in the past, Black women, who were breastfeeding, and that's why they were stopped from breastfeeding, and they were forced to breastfeed the children of their white slave owners.
Right.
And were used as wet nurses, right, because they were known for that, are now the women who are breastfeeding the least, and their infants are dying at the highest rate, and are they? So there's something going on, historical and kind of generational and present, that we can't ignore. And we can't just keep saying, you know, it's something's wrong with Black women. There's nothing wrong with us.
Right. And the work that you do, I know because you're an African-American woman, and a lot of work that you do is on the ground there as well, but you're also an international speaker. And I know that you've seen similar rates, similar patterns happening in other countries around the world too, haven't you?
Yes, yes, yes. And now the UK, most notably, is beginning to see the same disparities in their Black and minority ethnic women. They use the word BAME, not my favorite. So for the women of color there, we're beginning to see these very same disparities. And so when you see something happening over and over to the same type of women, you really have to talk about the systems and structures in place and not try to individualize what's happening with women. And so, you know, that's really what my work is. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, but, you know, I am a truth teller. And so, and I think when I bring my journalistic training, which is one of questions, which is one of inquiry, to say, you know, something's not right here. Yes, something's not right here. And the things that we've accepted as the answers just aren't true. Right. And so how do we get to the truth of the matter? And that's what I try to do in my books and in my work, and even on the community. You know, we've had this model that says that it's going to take research and science to solve all of these things. But my work has said, I think there are answers in the community.
Right.
And let's see how we value community knowledge. How do we value experiential knowledge? How do we value lived experience? Actually centering the people who are most burdened by this problem, not the so-called experts who have consistently failed Black women in particular, and all women in the US. So my work on the ground has been around really developing and creating a model of research, as it were, that says the community actually has the answers, and we don't have to try to fix and change it and save it and come in with saviorism models.
And that's definitely, that's something I want to talk about. So I want to, before we, because like my brain is going in a million directions, because there's so many things I want to ask you about, but I want.
Hi, everybody. Come on in. Let's see. Hey, there's everybody. How are you?
Good. How are you feeling, Rebecca? You've had a rough week, right?
Just finished a memorial service.
I'm so sorry.
And continuing. Thanks for asking. I thought I know it takes a while for people to log in, so I wanted to just play a little bit of the video for tonight. Let's see, is that working? Okay, I was frozen for a minute, but there I am. Can you all hear me? No. Something happened. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
You all are frozen. What is happening?
Yeah, you're a little like jerky.
Okay, well, maybe we have to let the system catch up. Everybody's frozen on my end.
I didn't know that the podcast was also recorded visually. So I hadn't, it's interesting to see them as opposed to just hearing them. I love Kimberly's glasses. Those are very cool. Very cool. I could not pull them off.
She always dresses so fabulously. Like she has incredible style.
Yeah, I only knew the voice.
Oh, I think, okay, let's see what happens. It keeps freezing. Oh, technology, help me today. Let's see. Okay, you all, I think it's just par for the course today. Can you all see me and hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, no, okay.
Oh,
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, I don't know. I've been on my computer all day. I don't know why it's doing it now. Okay, so yes, I wanted to play a little bit of the clip while everyone came in so we can have people take their time joining. I always ask you all your takeaways. I wanted to start out though asking about the first part of what what they were just talking about the statistics. And I love how she put it in a different way. The whole 200% Black women dying at 237% more than white women. Makes that three times and four times as much. It sounds different, rings true in a different way. And I'm curious, I know Jessica, you're at IBCLC. I'm curious if we have the stats specifically on the DMV community in terms of breastfeeding.
In terms of
Black women.
initiation, duration, off the top of my head, no, but I know exactly where to find them, so give me a second.
Okay, cool. So a big part of the work I think that we have to do is, as we're doing all of this learning, that we figure out how does it translate for this community, because
For breastfeeding for white women was 97, or for white people was 97%. For African Americans was 54.8%. Breastfeeding at 6 months was just about 80% for white folks and about 27% for African Americans. And then at 12 months, 42% for white folks, 11% for African Americans. And there's also some stats on Hispanic folks that are between the two, like they fall in between. I can type them in. I don't think there's a way to like share an image in the chat box, but I can type them in.
yeah, that's great. So we need to know the source and then also share it. So I wonder when you hear or when you see the stats, because Jessica's going to show us where to find it, you know, do these numbers ring true for your practice? Perhaps I should actually ask, how many of you are actually supporting Black families?
when I was at the PG Breastfeeding Coalition, they were doing formation of the PG Breastfeeding Coalition last year, and they shared similar numbers for families in PG County and throughout Maryland. They got their numbers from the Maryland Breastfeeding Coalition, what Jess just read.
So from year over year, it seems perhaps they're not changing, or I guess I'm curious who's doing the research, since, you know, the numbers that we have are.
Oh, they're CDC, sorry. It's
CDC.
CDC,
Okay.
and I think it comes from the NPINK survey, which I think, oh, no, sorry, National Immunization Survey. So it's like, and I think I actually have updated to 2011 to 2015. I just found a more recent paper, so I'll link it.
Yeah, and you can post it in the group, in the Facebook group. I want us to be, you know, when we think about, you know, having Black Breastfeeding Week, the advocacy around that is significant. And I know that there's controversy. So is there anyone here who wonders why we have a Black Breastfeeding Week? Nope. Okay. So I see that question quite a lot. There seems to be lots of people out in the world who don't understand why or don't respect why. So I hope that you all are showing up or have been showing up this week in those threads, really trying to provide some clarity around that. You know, I love how Kimberley puts it when she says, you know, it's interesting that that every time we talk about a statistic about where Black people are being left behind, the reply or the immediate response or the bias that people have, because the bias is that there's something wrong with Black people, that we're always the problem. that there's something that, that we're not doing or that we're broken. And in fact, part of why we historically became the wet nurses for white people during slavery is we were breastfeeding the most. That was the thing that we did the best. And it's really America's pattern to take what we do the best and seek to exploit it. I'll just leave that with you for you all to think about as you live your life, that there's a lot of exploitation and usury that happens in the areas where we are actually the best. Sadly, we are being left behind and being sabotaged. So as doulas, I'm wondering how, if anybody has had an experience of watching or the medical team or the support team sabotage a Black or brown family's plan for breastfeeding.
I know I didn't witness this firsthand, but it was at so many doulas' favorite hospital at GW. And the doula who I work with said that the nurse asked, "Are you going to formula feed or breastfeed?" And she had never heard that question asked in that way to any of her white clients. She always said, she always heard, "Are you planning to breastfeed?" Right? And it was framed differently. And so just that example of this microaggression that she knew, she'd heard the question 100 times before, that it wasn't framed that way. And so just from that minute, that mother is in this first, this golden hour, right? She just so impressionable in this first moments after birthing her baby. And now she's hearing that question. Is that the beginning of sowing that seed of doubt in her body and her ability and her plans, if that is her plan?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Yes, Karen.
I have a client who just gave birth at Howard County General Hospital. And so I didn't see her till day 3. And, she was released. And she told me, we were talking about the birth, getting the birth story, talking about initiation of breastfeeding. And she told me that and I don't know if it was a lactation consultant or just the nurse, asked she and her husband if they were WIC, if they were part of the WIC program, and they had no idea what WIC was. They that really made me angry because they were talking about the formula feeding, and that made me really angry. She is breastfeeding well, just FYI now. But
Good.
Yeah, that was angering.
Yeah, that's infuriating. It's insulting. Yeah, the setup. Anyone else have experience? Oh yes, Jessica.
Yeah, I'll say that I did my IBCLC training in North Carolina at UNC, and UNC has the first pathway to certified something or other thing, IBCLC training, I don't know, something fancy. And part of the way they structured that program was that they set up you have to get a certain number of hours of precepted time, and they do all of that for you. So I rotate.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fabulous for ease of student, right? So much easier than what normally you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So there were 5 different hospitals that we would rotate through and a birth center. And the lactation consultants that I would shadow, and there was one in particular where we found ourselves having these really just upsetting conversations with this one woman who was firmly in this space of well, my family was poor, so I don't have white privilege, that kind of space. And just fully could not see that the way that she interacted with her patients who were Black was fully different than the way that she interacted with her patients who were white. Consistently not going to see them, not going to check in on them, right? The policy of the hospital is that everybody gets lactation support, that every single person, a lactation consultant, comes in and introduces themselves and talks to you. if you are formula feeding, like talks to you about what it's going to be like in your body when your milk comes in, like that's supposed to happen. And she would just either not go see them or like, you know, push them off to me, her like fully inexperienced student who knows nothing about nothing. Like, and I remember having conversations with her, like, do you not understand, like, this is what white privilege is, like, this is exactly what the problem is. And like, it was just fascinating. We spent a lot of time talking about it with our like program, and yeah, so several times. I mean, it's North Carolina, so like, of course that's gonna be the situation, but yeah, many, that's like one example of, gosh, so many in that program.
That's so scary.
Mm-hmm.
That's so scary that, you know, and it's classic, the position of power and picking and choosing who you want to bestow your wisdom upon. That happens a lot, I think, in birth. And it's really obvious in breastfeeding, like it's actually measurable, because it's, you know, no matter, you know, people labor so differently and babies show up so differently, but by and large, if you have gestated for a while, even if there's a stillbirth or whatnot, your milk comes in, and there's a thing that should be happening, a level of care that should be happening for whatever the goals are. And to see it so inconsistently, the wisdom shared so inconsistently and right along bias lines is really, really sad, because it's something we can completely control. We can completely control the access. So yes, thank you for sharing. Anyone else have an example to share around the bias that shows up in breastfeeding? So my question for you all in terms of practice, what do you do to mitigate? What do you do to create consistency for your families around this information? I'll share what I do. So for one thing, whether I'm with them or not, sometimes somebody else on my team is there, I prep families for the golden hour, and then I talk with them about the expectation that somebody should be coming in and assessing your breastfeeding every day. And if you get to noon and nobody's done that, you should be calling and making the request and making sure that it happens without fail. So I also remind them, I usually send them a text message by 5 p.m. that if somebody hasn't come in, then the nurse manager can observe and support. So I try to make sure that it is the one thing that they do on day, like day one post-birth, that start of, so I talk about it quite a lot. I actually text partners or whomever is with that has the breastfeeding been assessed yet. That's generally my little check-in at the 12, 18 hour mark. And often I get the no, it hasn't happened, or sort of, or, well, I'm not really sure what they were supposed to be doing. So that's great. That's fine. I say, oh, well, like, yeah, was baby latched at the time that they came in? Because I have learned over the years that people just kind of swing in, duck their heads in, and it's like, yep, check it off my list. They didn't actually really spend any time with the family. I also, so I talk with them, try to help them understand what actually an assessment looks or feels like. And I also just ask, I say, well, did they happen to talk with you about formula? Did you get like, liquid bottles introduced to you? And often they're like, oh yeah, they brought them in. They're over here. They showed me where they were. And I just gently remind families that, short of like it being a solution, which should be presented as an option for jaundice, then, you don't need those. The plan is for breastfeeding. The expectation is that you're not leaking milk. So I try to remind them of that, because they suddenly get very nervous. Even though we've talked about it, that nothing is coming out and they're really not sure if baby's getting anything. So I try to remind them, like, listen, drip drops, maybe. Like, we're like looking for it. You may not see it. So I remind them, like, if you don't see it, that is so normal. We might not see it for 2 days, 3 days, baby's okay. So I find I have to do a lot of reinforcement of baby's okay. And just focusing on the comfort the pulling versus pinching of breastfeeding. So I know that, you know, a lot of us are mostly doulas, but just being able to do that and being really consistent with expectations and reminding them about breastfeeding and giving a lot of text messages and you're going to get it and it's all, you're going to figure it out, and making sure that assessments for like tongue ties, if she's starting to say like, oh, my nipple is like a little mangle, I'm like, oh, okay. So they should be checking for this. I try to do a lot of prep, even by text, of partner and birthing person before they leave the hospital. And then thankfully I'm able to set people up with quick access to an IBCLC once they get home, even if it's just by telephone or by video. So that's what I do in my practice, to really try to get people off to a good start, because I know it breaks down the minute the baby goes skin to skin. And in the first 7 days, it can go completely haywire. So we're really vigilant. I'm very vigilant about providing that instruction, support, and that cheering. But I'm curious to hear what you all have to share. So I think, Jessica, did you say you had something?
Yeah, but I'm happy to like wait for others to share.
Oh yeah.
Take too much space.
Yeah. So anything that others are doing to really undergird, I do that regardless of their race. I do it. I'm like a dog with a bone if they're Black. just saying. Anybody else have anything specific that you do?
So we have a getting started breastfeeding package that has 1 video call in the first 24 hours and then 2 in-home visits in the first 24 hours from coming home, and then another follow-up 1 a week later. And that video call in the first 24 hours is in case nobody really came and helped them in the hospital. And obviously we can't be going into the hospital and providing that care because you have to be a hospital-based lactation consultant to provide that, but we can get on their FaceTime and just check in that way. So that's one thing. And then also, now that we've gone virtual, having like kind of bundling in lactation as of a more basic service, because people charge from the hospital sooner. So they maybe didn't have that check-ins, but just had 1 before their discharge. And that's before anything's really getting exciting, right? Like milk hasn't even really transitioned when they're getting discharged. So having that CLC video call included in a doula package, virtual doula package for these virtual doula times.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think building it into your practice is an expectation. And I don't do free, but I think building it in as part of the service, that of every package, I think is really key. I think it reminds the family to, oh, I still need help. Like, they were there for the birth, but I still need help. And that immediate connection and a quick, and somebody making it a priority besides them is, I think, a really powerful way to keep it front and center and keep families on track during a time when it's easy to be derailed. Absolutely. Okay, Jessica.
I mean, I don't have anything huge. I was gonna say first, like currently I don't take very many doula clients and I don't take very many lactation clients, but when I do, they're primarily white. When I was doing my lactation rotation, right? So that took a year. When I was doing that, obviously I was at hospital, so I saw lots of different folks. And I am remembering one specific instance that I would love to I probably won't ever forget, because I have no idea if I did the right thing in that circumstance, or like an appropriate thing, a helpful thing, a harmful thing. I don't know. I just did a thing. And so I would love to share that experience and get some feedback on how that felt to folks. So it was in the hospital with this lactation consultant, and she had basically said, oh, why don't you go see these patients over here? And I went in to see a young Black mom, and she had family there when I walked into the room, but they were like, oh, the lactation consultant's here, we'll give you some privacy, right? So they stepped out, and she was so excited about breastfeeding. was awesome, right? She was like, I know that this is like the best thing for my baby. Like, I'm so excited about this. You know, I think the baby was 24 hours old, right? So like, just like, I'm sorry, I think Emily said, like, things weren't really happening yet, right? Like, hospital lactation support is so different than outpatient lactation support. And it's like a little bit like, you may not even know if there are going to be things in that first period of time. So like, basically her kiddo wasn't even hungry, like, but somebody had brought her formula, right? So like, I sat down with her kid wasn't hungry. And so we talked about like breastfeeding, what her goals were. We talked about like, why was there formula here? Oh, I don't know. Somebody just brought it in and like left it. We talked about like, okay, so there's no indication here that there would be any reason for you to use formula. Like, there's no reason. Like, I think we did some hand expression. I was like, oh, look, you've got lots of colostrum. This is awesome. Like, there's no reason for this. But she specifically said, like, yeah, the thing is, like, nobody in my family breastfed, and like, I don't know anybody who breastfeeds. And in that moment, I remember feeling really uncomfortable. And what I ended up doing was saying, you know, like, there are a lot of great resources for Black women about breastfeeding, right? Like, that doesn't have to be the case. And I remember like pulled up on my phone, the Black Women Do Breastfeed. Is it an Instagram account that's like expanded beyond that, and talked a little bit about like Mocha Moms, which I think is that Kimberley Seals-Aller's group, and like I think that's what it's called, Mocha Moms?
Mocha Moms is a mom's group. It's more like a stay-at-home moms group. So
no, what's Kimberley Seals-Aller's group, book?
The Mocha Manual.
Thank you, that, right. Yeah, and so I remember like, I just like showed her, you know, some resources that were specifically like targeted for Black women, and she seemed really excited about them, whatever. I like left. I still don't know if that was like I felt really uncomfortable doing that, and I don't know if that was like appropriate. Like, great, I'm connecting somebody to resources that reflect them, or if that was like, I don't know, not the right thing to do. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I didn't share, but I absolutely do that for my Black moms. Like, it's Black Women Do Breastfeed. There's two others. There's one group that has like 90,000 Black women in it. And it's a public group. There are groups on Facebook. You should be sharing those Facebook resources. I share them before they birth, because I want them to become, you know, to join. I want them to see what the questions are. I want them to see how the groups are being used. So I tell them, listen, at 2 a.m., everybody's up feeding their babies. Everybody's exhausted. They're a mess. They're crying. The baby is like pushing away and stiffening their bodies. And you're like, but the nipple is right here. Everybody's like leaking from their vaginas and leaking from their breasts, or their breasts are hard. They're so frustrated. They're so exhausted. They want to give up. The baby's tweaking the other nipple. I mean, it's all kinds of shenanigans happening in the middle of the night. And these women are on the group talking about it. And that's where you find camaraderie, because when we're doing the postpartum plan, we're talking about who's supporting you in breastfeeding. I say, do you have family? We were on the East Coast with most of the family. So I say, do you have friends on the West Coast? Because they're still up. Like, you might at 2 a.m., right? You know, you can actually call them and they like legit will answer the phone. So on our plan, we need to know who's in the other time zones who will actually answer your phone call. Or if you text a picture of you like looking crazy, they're gonna be like, oh my God, SOS, let's call me. Sometimes you can't call, right? Because the baby is like, ooh, might wake up. So you can only text, like all these little things. It's like, let's get down to the practical. Who's gonna help you? You cannot be alone on this journey. You will give up. It will be hard and sad. So get with a bunch of people who are ahead of you in the journey. So I try to make sure that when I'm doing one of my prenatals or my little prenatal check-ins, like right now I have a mom who's percolating and I'm like, hey, did you get into those groups? Have you seen it? And all she's thinking about is like, is labor going to start on its own, or are they going to, you know, am I going to run into the induction date? And I'm thinking about that too. And then I'm also trying to prep her for what's like really soon about to be her reality, and make sure that she's gone into the groups and had a little bit of connection, and realize that when she hits that tough spot, she can activate these groups and just go in. You can be a lurker, you can be a poster, you can be all kinds of things in the middle, but get this information. I show them how to search in the group for different topics. so Sam, you're asking about what groups. It's Black Women Do Breastfeed. You also can just do a search on Facebook of Black breastfeed, and there are some that come up. Because I'm on my phone and my computer is doing something glitchy, I can't actually look it up, but I can put it in the thread after the call and share. There, like I said, there's one group that's like 90,000 women in it, and it's very helpful. So yes, for Black women, I think you do have to share those resources, those online resources. So some people prefer Instagram versus Facebook. I think all of those groups have both, but show them, talk with them how to use it. Yeah, 165K in it. It's almost like one of those things where once you're in it, you don't really get out of it. People don't really delete it because it leads to like all these parenting groups. Not only that, I also talk to my families about exclusively pump groups. Those exist. I want them to know that if this is a thing that kind of like starts not working out, that it's normal, that there's a group for them. So Black Women Do Exclusively Pump, I think, is a group. There's a bunch. So you all do a search. But I absolutely believe in making sure people are connected. I encourage people, like in the DC area, they sign up for PACE groups, but I encourage them to, there's one La Leche leader who I was her doula, who's Black in the area. She's actually in Virginia, in Northern Virginia. So to actually do the research for when you need resources, who is culturally congruent with you to be able to connect up. I think we have like maybe one person who, one IBCLC who works with the Breastfeeding Center of Greater Washington. I have found that group to be problematic, helpful in some ways, but problematic culturally. So I don't run to send my clients there. One of IBCLC's hands down that I love, she's like just a hidden gem. We were on staff at Sibley together as breastfeeding educators. She's an IBCLC now. Her name is Maxine Robinson. I love her to pieces. She's amazing. She handled Sibley's warm line, breastfeeding line, which means people are leaving messages. This woman can get you to breastfeed from the sound of her voice. And that's like magic. That's not easy to do because we all like kind of need to see it and da-da-da. So anyway, there is some help in the area, but I just think that having culturally congruent support is really, really powerful. So what you did, Jessica, was perfect. You gave her a place where she could find encouragement, find mentors, and find wisdom. That was perfect. Long answer. So yeah, and I think this is a really great week. So when we're talking about celebrating Black Breastfeeding Week, instead of it being like a performative thing or something that we really question, this is a time for you to look at your resource list and tighten it up. Like who are my go-tos in this community? What is my practice around, do I undermine Black breastfeeding? Can we just get real personal and like really question ourselves? Do I undermine Black breastfeeding with my policies, with my prices, with my practices, with my language? Do I have those images on any of my literature? Do I promote Black breastfeeding in any way? Do I ever even think about it or talk about it with my team, with families? Yeah, do I put myself out there as an activist for Black breastfeeding or Hispanic, like, you know, Latinx breastfeeding? All of that is really important to ask. Yes, Emily.
I really loved in the interview that she mentioned the article that she wrote on I put it up on my phone. Are white women suppressing Black breastfeeding rates? And I'm curious if anybody went and read that after watching it. Yeah, there were a couple of things in there that I was like, oh, that's a thing, like the WIC contracts and curriculum and like the bidding on that. I was like, oh, that's a huge thing. And how later on she talked about how there was like only you know, she talked about like the access into IBCLC programs and like the barriers there. Like we're looking at all those systemic things. So it sounds like everybody read that.
Yeah. So that was my next question is, what did you love from this interview? Takeaway. So that was one of the things that you loved, Emily. Okay. How about you, Kieran? I'll go around and ask everyone.
I love the Earth Project.
Can
Like,
we talk
I
about
think
the app?
that is fantastic. It's like a fantastic idea. I love it. I think she's right on, and unfortunately, we are such a business capitalist driven society that we will probably, well, you have to attack it from all sides, but I think this is going to be very, very successful. And again, it will help every birthing woman, not just Black women.
Yeah.
Hispanic, every birthing woman. So I was super excited and interested about that project. So
yeah. So this is one thing that you can do this week if you haven't done it already. Explore Earth. Look at, this is like what she describes it as like Yelp, right? And being able to rank. And you're absolutely right that when we actually explore this for how it impacts Black and brown women, it really improves the service and the support given to all women. I also love that she's really a big proponent of decolonizing data, decolonizing the research. And that is something we all have to be really, we're throwing around these statistics, but we have to be vigilant about who's actually a part of the research and the data set, and questioning some of the things that are coming at us. Unfortunately, nowadays, we even see we have to question what's coming out of the CDC, because they're not always telling us the truth about things like COVID-19 and testing. So that part. Vanessa, what did you love about the interview? Anything that was like, ah.
Well, all of it, but the Earth thing too, which I've shared with I'm not really taking clients right now, but I had one client and then a few prenatal yoga people that I've created a community with, and I give them my cell phone so they feel like they've got someone they can talk to. And I've sent two of them to I wanted to mention Tamoya's warm line that she started during COVID. And one of them is a Black mother who's exclusively pumping. And so I've sent her there a couple times because she was feeling a little, lack of support around that.
Yeah, isolated.
But yeah, because it's already isolating. But also there's one line that I love, both times I've listened to, where she calls, and this is what I think Earth is going to do to help like pull the veil off of it, is that doulas are like this underground railroad of what did she say? Shoot, I wrote it down and I don't have it in front of me. But underground railroad of or this underground of birth and survival, or breastfeeding. Does somebody know exactly what it is? I'm trying to remember the exact words. I don't have it right in front of me, but that always like stuck out. But the second time, because I tried to jog my memory today listening to it again, was that it made me think today as I re-listened to it, why and maybe I'm still fairly new doula, but how do we be completely transparent without putting fear on our clients of like, these are the places you should avoid? And for example, that one prenatal yoga student who was showing up every single week with her best friend, and they were taking class, everything. And as that community forms, they were always like checking in, like, oh, where are you giving birth? And all like those conversations that naturally happen. And she was giving birth at Holy Cross, and so of course she didn't get the support. So of course, like, I'm really glad I gave her my cell phone number before, and she had that, because she texted me within those like 24 hours or so I was able to get her hooked up with people. But at the same time, like, I was trying to think of ways, and I was not sure if I went about it like the best way, but before she gave birth, like giving all these resources and trying to say like, these are like other options also, I was not in a position where she had hired me as her doula, so that was a little bit of a different situation. But I guess that's something that stuck out to me and also made me think, like, how do we do that in a way to steer people maybe away from non-supportive
Spaces.
places? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be really honest, I think it depends on when they hire, when they connect with you. You know, sometimes it's just too late.
Right.
And then all
Right.
you're doing, you just undergird them. Like, you just have to prop them up. They just, with as many access points as possible. You know, people are adults, they're autonomous, they are making their choices for lots of reasons. Maybe it's the closest place to them. Maybe they really are committed to this doctor and it's the only place where they practice. You know, there's all sorts of reasons. And yet, you know, like, all the possibilities, you're the holder of that. So I think that, yeah, I think you measure it very carefully. Sometimes we overshare and we create some stress or anxiety. But here's what I'll say. I often am calculating building trust with this person and credibility. So I often tell them the truth, and I'll just say, look, this is what I've seen, what I know what happens. So I just want you to be aware that if you start to see things going down this road, first of all, I hope it doesn't happen to you. But if you see it started turning in this direction, here are some things that you can do. So my job is to just I'm not just going to give them the bad news, but give them some tips, and also say, and you can call me in the middle of all of this. I don't care if it's 2 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever. You can call me or you can text me and I will help you figure it out if you're starting to feel overwhelmed by what is coming at you. You know, that's just how it goes. You know, these places are the places, and their choices are their choices. I often will have, I also will send them an email with a bunch of resources and then follow up and check on them. That's all you can do sometimes. And sounds like, you know, with her, you nailed it in terms of being available for additional support. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I think we are the Underground Railroad. I think that's the way I approach it especially when I'm working with Black and Brown moms. I'm like, no, they're not going to get you. They're not going to get you. They're not going to hurt you. They might, but we're going to triage. You're going to be okay. And that is definitely what I think my ancestors were doing as they were trying to get us to freedom. So yeah, I completely agree with Kimberly in that way. So Michelle, what did you love about the exchange with her and Layla?
I really love the whole thing. And also, Vanessa stole the words out of my mouth. The Underground Railroad piece really, I was walking my dog at the time and like just stopped me in my tracks. And I feel like this Earth, like Karen said, this Earth project with the app is just, I mean, ingenious, first of all, so desperately needed all over the country, I can imagine, but I could see it having so much impact even here in DC. And also just like the power of the people, right? As Vanessa is like mentioned, like it's not coming just from us as like, I mean, we know because we're so in it and we've seen what birth can look like and we see what it often looks like at the places that are not supportive. But I feel like for people to hear it from peers is often how people make their change in their decisions, right? And I'll say, Vanessa, so as a prenatal yoga teacher myself and a birth doula and all of that, like I've been teaching prenatal yoga for probably at least 10 years. And the longer you do this, the more you're like, let me lay this out for you. You know, like you can't anymore. You're just so, like, it's so painful to keep hearing the same stories. And so you have to say, let's talk about, and you can do it, I think, in a really kind and informative way of like, let's talk about your goals and your vision for your birth. All right, like let's start there. What are your goals? Because maybe your goals are to like get an epidural in the parking lot and like possibly get a C-section and you don't care. Okay, fine. Then Sibley's a great place for you. You know, like that's fine and you're in alignment and that's wonderful. But if you are hoping for the most crunchy, natural, unmedicated, whatever, however we want to phrase it, birth, and you're like, I'm at Sibley with Bloom, you're like, it could happen, right? Like it's not impossible, but if you're trying to do that without a doula or whatever, like it's less likely that that's going to occur for you. And here's why, right? And so I think that then when you share in a way that is really, a sort of affirming, I guess, for them, that then they get to make the decision, right? And then we step back with like non-attachment, right? It's your birth, it's your outcome. So I just actually sent out my newsletter to my list today, to my community, and had Earth on it and asked for people to support it. And so I'm crossing my fingers that it really does launch this fall, and that we can really like advocate and spread the word. I was wondering, and we can circle back to this if it's okay, but I wanted to just ask a little bit of a vulnerable question. So I actually don't service a very diverse population, and I want to more. Based on my location, I'm in Northwest DC. I'm very close to Sibley, but I don't really serve the Sibley set too much. I try to work with the midwife populations a little bit more, but I have a business question where I want to know, like, if I want to attract clients that don't look like me, but the yoga classes that I've taught, the clients that I've worked with, mostly have white skin, right? Or are of a certain socioeconomic level. And those are the pictures that I use like on my website, because I try to use real life examples. Do I take photos that are like stock photos, or do I invite people of color in the community to share? Like, I don't want to exploit in any way, but I also want to like try to be more inclusive, so I would love to get thoughts on that.
So I think it's a fine line. I think people use stock photos all the time. I think it's okay for you to use diverse images, because here's the reality. It's kind of like, do you put the chicken come first or the egg? When people are looking for a class, they generally are looking on your website. If they don't see images of themselves, well, they're probably not going to come. So then you end up having like really monolithic students. So I think that having stock images are fine and makes sense. It shows your intention. I think you can also have things on your website, like if you support Black Breastfeeding Week, put the logo up there, like promote events and things like that to show like community, because you're not just doing, that you have an influence on a variety of communities. So being able to support efforts, if it's Black Lives Matter, Black Mamas Matter, any kind of indication that you are looking to support a variety of communities, I think is great. I also think this is where like hiring, having people on your team who reflect these communities and might connect a little bit more easily. Sometimes it's hard to get started, but I think that those are two ways where you can begin. And you can also just talk with people who are in the yoga space to say, I want more, and I want to do more, I want to be more involved. How do I do that? So maybe even supporting causes outside of the yoga community, just you actually, Michelle, showing up, and people say she's an ally or she's a co-conspirator. This is, I want to go to her class, or I want to, support her studio. So you showing support for other people's businesses, and then they, be networking with birth professionals. I think you can be on their referral list. We're always looking for prenatal yoga classes and referring our families to them. So being able to do that, I think, is also like have that mutual referral support system, I think, is another way to support not only like serving the population, but supporting other small Black businesses and business owners.
Well, and I liked what you said before about that, which was also, maybe it's not our role to be the person to serve, people that don't look like us, right? Like, which I'm okay with that too. And just helping bring up other doulas or refer out or things like that. So I've been thinking about it from like a lot of different ways. And also that my community, if it is of a certain socioeconomic status or whatnot, then bring in the money, right? Like donate your money, like asking people, like spread the money, put it here, So that's what I was thinking. But
even supporting, there's so many of these yoga classes being taught, or like instructor certification programs being really promoted during COVID-19, supporting people on their career journey, supporting, along, staying in your profession, but also supporting people coming into the profession and getting a start. They actually need to really practice the teaching. So yeah, being open to apprenticing and helping support people that way.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Jessica?
I have a question from this.
Okay.
This thread has my brain churning a little bit.
Okay.
Has anybody heard of or is listening to the podcast Nice White Parents?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yes, I just finished all of it.
Yeah. I think I'm on episode 3 or something. It's a New York Times.
Okay.
No, it's Serial. It's from Serial Productions or whatever. Yeah. So it's this. It's Hannah Joffrey Walt, I think is her name, is the producer.
Oh, I have heard of this. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and it's about integration, sort of, and how white folks routinely are the problem. No shocker there. And it's interesting because this is making me, this sort of kicked up for me, that question about the importance of respecting and honoring spaces that are not integrated, right? Or not diverse, where specifically for people of color, having those spaces is essential, but also integration is important too. And it's such a I know I don't
balance.
I don't find myself feeling I need to go attract clients who don't look like me, because I'm not sure that I'm the best person. I hope that I'm doing my work, but I also don't know that I'm the best person to serve Black women or Latinx women. And if I have a client who chooses to work with me, awesome. I feel like I can walk into the conversations to some extent. I can fall through them, and I better prepared now than I was 6 years ago. But also that question of what does it mean to be a co-conspirator? And actually, this was the thing that I liked best about the podcast. So I'll wrap my conversation right in there. Was Kimberley has this saying that she said in she says this often in speaking things, where she talks about the importance of white women's role in this work is to know when to step aside and let others lead. And I love that. And also I always want her to say more, how do I know? How do I know when that is? Is it all the time? That's fine. I don't particularly like leading, so that's cool. I'm happy to do that. But also, yeah, I don't know. So I'm gonna shut up now. But
I think, okay, so the how do you know is when you see somebody shining and you get a little jealous, or you are there's a little bit of resistance. Yeah, step aside.
Oh, that's I love that.
Because I think your bias is you can't do it, or wait a minute. So when you're actually watching them soar and you get a little, and there's a little bit of resistance, it's very similar philosophy in massage therapy. When you actually are going deep, and you get a little resistance within the body, that's when you stop and you stay there. So yeah, when you get a little resistance, or you're you see them rising and you might get a little jealous, or you actually, let's keep it real. White women start actively trying to suppress our leadership, our voice. Check yourself, and be the person who checks someone else when you observe one of your white peers doing it. It's I noticed that you're doing this. You cut her off, you overtalk her, you undermine her projects, things like that. Now that's some real co-conspiring. We would all appreciate that. We in the Black delegation. For real. Samantha, what did you love?
I loved all of it. I just, I'm sad that Earth isn't up and running yet. Their website is, but they are collecting information from birthing people already.
Yeah.
It's in their website, and they're actually hiring a designer, an independent contractor, to help them with their apps. So, yeah, spread the word.
Yeah, I think she just got some money last year. I remember the announcement, her and her son putting this together. It's amazing. So I think, it was last year. Yeah. So, yeah, it's in its infancy, but it's the right thing to do. I know she's really promoting it. I know our organization is going to support it. So, right, Jessica, we're conspiring.
Yeah, I sent
Yeah.
her an email back today.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Let's see. Who else?
Did you
What
hear
did
she
you-
mentioned Donna in the podcast?
Yeah.
She like
Yeah,
name dropped us. I was like,
I know. I love that. And also we added her book, The Big Letdown, to our reading list. And the Black Donor Doulas group, we are actually, since it's Black August and Black Breastfeeding Week, we are reading her book in our group. And so I'm hoping to surprise everybody. Also, our Black Donor Doulas, we gather every Friday in our pajamas with drinks and stuff. And I'm trying to get Kimberley to surprise them. They're going to be totally shocked tomorrow. So, but yes. Okay. So yes, Nice White Parents is on the list. I might actually add that to the group. There's another, like little video series that I've been meaning to share with you all. So I'm probably just going to drop it in the Facebook group to just share. Right at this very moment, I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's like talking to a Black guy. And I can't just remember the phrasing of it, but it's basically people talking, yes, to
Is it the uncomfortable conversations
with a Black man or something like that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that series too. So there's a bunch of places for teaching opportunities. Thank you for sharing that in the group, Michelle. So in terms of Black breastfeeding, I know that there are lots of events happening over the weekend. Some cultural, like there's a cultural ceremony that's being shared out of the Black Breastfeeding Coalition out of Milwaukee. So Dalvery, I think it's Caldwell, she's promoting it. I'll try to make sure as these events keep coming across my timeline that I share, but I think that it's a opportunity to support Black Breastfeeding Week. I also think that, and just Black breastfeeding in general, and to learn something. I also think that someone brought up the point that there is also a time for the spaces to just be Black spaces, and to respect that and just to support that. And you might find that there's some events that will come up that will not be for white people. And I hope that you just take a little bit of time to process what that is like. And even I haven't seen anybody do it, but I would love to see somebody like create a space for white people to celebrate Black Breastfeeding Week next year, or in the next couple of days, because it doesn't take that long to create an event and throw up a Zoom room around like having a discussion about how can we support Black breastfeeding? How do we undermine it? All these questions I just asked you. How could we celebrate it? How can we support it? What resources can we put together to make sure that we are supporting Black women in our community to breastfeed? We have people who have marketing backgrounds. We have people who are in medicine. We have people in our groups that are in a variety of industries who could really help support Black breastfeeding right in the DMV area. So I want to encourage somebody to take that on as white women to support breastfeeding by Black women. Speaking of that, is anybody on the call doing an event or supporting an event for Black Breastfeeding Week?
So we were trying to host a Black Breastfeeding photo shoot. Didn't have enough participation to have the photos released because representation matters, and showing photos of Black women breastfeeding is, especially in this week, is super important. But we didn't have enough people, so we decided to pivot and just say the whole next year we're celebrating Black breastfeeding, and so we're just going to keep that project going as participants step up the models that we're paying for their time, and our photographer who we've hired, Aaliyah Clark. She's a yoga instructor as well. You might have heard her name, but she's the photographer behind the Melanin Bump. And so just decided, let's keep it rolling, right? And so just rolling out those stories all year based on the things that were this week's Black Breastfeeding Week's themes: revive, the other two, I forget what they are right now.
Revive, restore. Yeah, I don't remember.
There's an exclamation point at the end. I remember that. So just keeping those stories, asking the folks who come forward with participating in the project to share, like, how's your experience been in relation to one of these themes or these themes. So keeping those stories going. And because we didn't have any participants in time for the photos to come out this week, we've invited our audience of Black breastfeeders and chest feeders to share their pictures, and then we're kind of creating custom artworks from those photos that we're gifting to them. After we get 10 gifts that we're giving out, we're using that money to fundraise for our anti-racism town halls within the company and keeping those things going kind of on the inside, like systems, right? So that's what we've been doing for this week to celebrate.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the photo shoots work really well. I think there's an opportunity. So here's my question for you, Emily. Can people refer clients or like newly birthed people who are breastfeeding to be a part of the photo shoot so that they can have images, or is it just your clients? Your agency?
So it would be everybody, not just our clients, but Aaliyah's in Toronto right now. And so she was put in the call out. Originally, when we first started talking about it back in March, she was going to come here in July and take photos, and then they closed down the borders. And so we're like, okay, we gotta shift gears. And so we put out the call for models, paid models there in Toronto. And I know she had a lot of frustration with the lack of response. Like, that was a frustration for her as a woman who identifies as a brown woman. She was really frustrated that nobody in her community was coming forward to participate. But I think it kind of freed up some space whenever we said, let's just take the bookends off of this week. Yes, we're going to celebrate it this week, but let's keep the story going and keep the story going.
Well, it sounds like there needs to be some education around it in that community. Usually when there's, when you don't get the response that you want, there's a lack of trust and lack of generally knowledge and connection. So she might have to pound the pavement a little bit to actually get people to show up. Anyone else do a part of an event?
She does come back to the DC area, then we'll try to host one here as well.
Yeah, and let us know. You let us know in the group. Okay. Vanessa?
I'm not doing any, like, I'm not hosting a group or anything like that, but I've been using my Instagram page every Monday to do Melanated Monday and amplify voice that way. And I think it was in this group that I learned about the Black Health Summit that was back in July, and I heard Felicia Floyd, who's an IBCLC, speak. Was amazing, and I learned a lot more history that I didn't know about. So I asked her if she was okay with me featuring her this past Monday, and she's been offering a variety of really awesome conversations and interviews, mostly on Instagram. But I've been tuning into those, and that's someone else I just wanted to mention to kind of follow if you're looking for. She's Blacktivist on Instagram. And yeah, she's like an abundance of amazing knowledge and all that.
Yeah, so if you can share her information in the Facebook group, I think it's great for, if you're not participating, if you're not co-sponsoring, then at least just educating for this year around, and taking a look, examining like your knowledge base. But yeah, Blacktivist, Felicia's amazing. I met her at a CLC conference that I spoke at. It was in January, and and so she launched. So it's Blacktivist, which is brilliant. And I know she's conspiring with 2 other Black women on some curriculum and some classes. So she's more to come from them. Awesome. Like I said, I mentioned for Kimberley, she's got Mocha Manual, which is a great resource for Black women who are parenting, breastfeeding, trying to figure their life out. She also we actually have Dona's website or reading list has the big letdown in there in terms of like activism and awareness around breastfeeding, but she's also in the business section, like the Mocha manual on how to like get your side hustle going, which we think is really valuable for doulas because a lot of times you all are starting out brand new and it's like a side hustle. So she has a couple of books out there. And so I just want to promote supporting her as you also gain some knowledge and are, you know, getting a little bit more comfortable with working with people of color, Black people, brown people in your practice, and you know, making sure that you are in your energy and on all levels, demonstrating your anti-racism as well as your co-conspirator intentions. So I just wanted to make sure that that is out there. I'm just scanning the chat really quickly. Yeah, Natal, Natal. They have some great stuff out there for learning. Love that. Nice White Parents is on the list. There's a couple of resources. So I'm going to try to save, I'll save the chat, but I just want to review. Black Women Do Breastfeed is a great group. Breastfeeding Support Group for Black Moms. That's the other Facebook group that has like a bazillion people in it. And then we have our resource right in DC is Tamoya. She is with Asha Village. So she has a warm line, and I want us to use these resources. This should go on your resource list, your handout that you always are giving to families, so that you don't have to try to remember it. It's just part of the fabric of your practice. Okay, is there, Mama Toto is launching a Black breastfeeding, chest feeding group this week. Awesome. I am doing a parent support group in general that's starting on, it's meeting on Tuesdays, starting in September, the melanated edition. So if you have any Black families who are just looking for a support group, I will share that link as well, just so that we can, you can, again, have it on your list for families who are looking for support. That's another thing I do prenatally before they have babies, is identify how you're going to build this community. Outside of breastfeeding, but just like in general. And so having that support group, I think, is really helpful, especially now with COVID-19 when people are really isolated in the postpartum period. Okay, any closing thoughts? Kimberly, we didn't talk a whole lot about Kimberly. We know she's fabulous and there's more to come. She's on YouTube and there's some, you know, other interviews of her and her work. I know we're going to support Earth, but any takeaways, anything you want to share as we close out? No.
Perfect. Just a thank you for all the hard work that you're doing, and I mean, just
You're welcome.
That you have in the air. I mean, when's your book coming out? Because it's impressive. I mean,
never. I don't even have time to write it. Yeah.
Well, your time management must be on point, because I know there's a million things you're doing. So thank you for dealing with all of us and educating us. And I hope that, I know some of our groups have been a little bit smaller, but I hope that you know that many of us are still, we're committed, we're here, we're in it for the long haul. It's just, we're processing all of it, you know?
Yeah, no, I understand it 100%. Like if I'm like spinning, I know like your minds are blown. So I get it. There's a lot, you know, just like as a human on the earth right now, if you are a human on the earth in America right now, if you're a woman, it's just, if you're a mom, a wife, I mean, there's just so much. I know y'all know, it's just so much. So whenever you all show up, I know you've had to put a lot aside to make that happen. You've had to be very intentional. I know that it's a big deal. So, you know, even tonight, like the memorial service for my brother-in-law went long, and I literally had like maybe 30 minutes to transition to this. And I was just like, I should have canceled. And and I was like, but I can't, you know. I think showing up is important, and I'll figure life out over the next, you know, couple of hours, but I think it's important for us to keep showing up. So I especially thought it was great to have this conversation, knowing that there were still some more days in Black Breastfeeding Week and a lot of educational opportunities. So I just wanted to be able to make sure we got on, that we can highlight those, and that you all had a chance to just ask your questions. Because I'm watching what's happening online around why do we still have Black Breastfeeding Week. I'm like, are there people in the group who are asking that? I want to make sure that we have a chance to get that cleared up. So yeah, so I'm happy to keep showing up, and we're gonna figure it out all together. So thank you.
I hope you're taking some time to care for yourself as well. And if you ever need to cancel, it's okay to let something go for a minute.
Oh, thank you.
12, and we'll
We
still
would
be.
totally understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna unplug for the next couple days, and yeah, hopefully that'll give me a little bit of a reset. So thank you all. I hope you enjoy the Black Breastfeeding events this week, and I'll see you. I think we have, I don't know when we meet. I don't know when we meet again. I think we have a session next week, but I'll see you all online.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night.